Let's cross now to Jerusalem and talk to Andy David. He's the deputy spokesman for the Israeli Foreign Ministry. Good to have you with us. Some strong words there from John King of UNRWA. At what point does Israel decide the civilian price is too high for this offensive?
Well, the doctor mentioned accountability. I would like to emphasize that word, accountability. This could all be ended in minutes if Hamas takes accountability for its action, if Hamas stops the firing of rockets, if Hamas starts bringing in medical equipment instead of rockets into the Gaza Strip. This could all be over in minutes.
I'm sorry, you're not answering the question. I mean, much of the world is saying the Israeli offensive, its tactics, are costing too much in civilian lives. Clearly, it seems Israel doesn't agree because the offensive continues. Do you, as a foreign minister, do you have a measure, a point at which you decide, actually, the cost is too great? We've either got to stop this, we've got to change our tactics. Is there such a measure?
Well, if we're talking about changing of tactics, this operation is not something that easily takes. Is not something that Israel is taking easily. We've waited 8 years. We tried everything we know. We tried negotiations. We tried direct negotiations, indirect negotiations. We tried a ceasefire. The only response we got is more arming, more investment in military equipment by Hamas. Instead of buying greenhouses, instead of buying more medical equipment, instead of developing the Gaza Strip and turning it into a Hong Kong or a Singapore, Hamas has turned it into a launching pad for rockets. This is unacceptable, and I want to emphasize again the word accountability. Hamas must be accountable for its actions.
Andy, I'm sorry to press you on this, but you're not answering the question here. Your methodology, okay, as you said, you've waited 8 years. Now, your way of approaching Gaza and attacking a heavily populated area is costing thousands in casualties, in people dead and wounded. Is that a too high a price for you? At what point does Israel say, actually, it is too high? This number of civilians shouldn't be targeted in this way.
Civilians are not targeted, but Hamas, and proudly they said it, we are hiding among civilians because they are our shield. They're using the civilians as human shields against international law. This is a responsibility and accountability that Hamas must bear. We are trying to avoid casualties. 80% of the Air Force operations, for instance, are being aborted just because there are civilians present. But when you have soldiers, combatants, gunmen hiding among civilians, this has in the past given them protection. That will not longer be the case. And as I'm repeating myself, we will try to do our best to avoid human casualties. We are doing everything in our power to provide the humanitarian aid. We are opening the borders for those trucks who are bringing in medical equipment, food. But let's say the truth. We have information that Hamas people are taking over some of this food, for instance, and they're turning it into a black market. They're selling it instead of giving it to the population. An M16 rifle, the price of that is somewhere between $5,000 to $10,000 in the market. Where do they get all this money? Where do they get all those weapons? This is money that instead of going to the poor,
sorry, Andy,
is going to more violence.
Forgive me for interrupting. I've asked you the question 3 times. I don't really feel you've given me an answer. However, we'll move on. I'd like to take you up on the point you mentioned there, that if fighters are in civilian areas, you will no longer hold back. What does that mean? If you feel or suspect that fighters are operating in a school, near an entrance of a hospital, you will deliberately target civilian hospitals and schools?
No, that's not what I said. What I said is that 80% of the operations are being aborted. Well, yesterday we hit some of our own soldiers. Sometimes those things happen during battles, and I would say that if we're talking about success rate of trying to avoid civilian casualties, if we compare this campaign to other campaigns around the world, I think we're much better success, have a much better success rate than any other army around the world. And let's not forget who we're dealing with here. These are people who are cynically using civilians. Now, some of those pictures of people who are suffering, it touches our heart as well. We mourn for every Palestinian civilian who is being killed or injured. We don't want to see those pictures. And as I said before, this can all be over in minutes. There is one way to end this. The way is to return to security, meaning no more violence, no more fire attacks, no more rocket attacks, no more smuggling of weapons.
Sorry, Andy David,
if this operation...
Could you explain to me why a second UN school was then hit? UN officials say they have given you coordinates of all the schools.
Well, I don't know exactly the specifics about this operation with this school, but I know that in the past, some of the schools were used cynically to launch rockets. We have footage of that. We know that ambulances were used.
Sorry, your answer
by
indicates
Hamas.
that if you think rockets are being launched near civilian targets that you or your government has been informed of and you know are packed with civilians who fled refugee camps, you will still attack it. I mean, it's one way or the other. Either you're not bothering to look at these coordinates, or you are and you know they're there and you're targeting them because you think rockets or fighters are operating near them. It's one or the other, isn't it?
No, that's not the case. As I said before, if that was the case, the number of casualties would go up to 1,000. This is not the way we operate. Certainly not. And we have information, for instance, about Hamas people who are disguising themselves as medical teams in hospitals. We will not target those hospitals. Of course not. This is not the way we conduct ourselves. What I'm trying to say is this, that if you are hiding among civilians and you are targeting our own civilians, at the end of the day, one must make a choice. One must make a decision. What would you do if somebody is shooting at you and is hiding behind innocent people? What do you do?
Seems to be clear.
How do you protect your own people?
We're running out of satellite time, so I'm going to have to say goodbye to you. Andy Davidson, from the Deputy Spokesman for the Israeli Foreign Ministry. Thanks.